It's Tuesday, February the 14th, 2017, and this is your Barbados Today Evening Update. I'm Emmanuel Joseph. Thanks for joining us. Topping the news at this hour, the opposition Barbados Labour Party has threatened to take the government to court if Parliament passed the Revenue Authority Amendment Bill that was introduced today by Minister of Finance Sinckler. The opposition MP for St. Joseph and former Attorney General Dale Marshall said the measure was unconstitutional and will not get the two-thirds majority required from his side. Marshall is particularly concerned that the provision in the bill, which requires persons to pay off all outstanding taxes, interests and penalties before conveying a piece of land, would be an additional and unbearable financial burden on poor Barbadians.
I, for one, Mr. Speaker, would bow my head in shame if this Parliament were to allow this bill to pass. Courts eventually determine the constitutionality of legislation. I would urge that the Minister take into account the cautionary views of 12 or 1,400 trained lawyers. 12 or 1,400 trained lawyers who have weighed in on this issue and have said you need to pause. We have doubts about its constitutionality. Mr. Speaker, out of the abundance of caution, we would urge that the Minister, we would urge he withdraws this bill. But knowing that such is not his temperament, and it is not the want of the government benches to do such daring things, we would urge, sir, that this matter be sent to a select committee for careful review.
Leading off debate this morning, Minister Sinckler defended the amendments being made to the Revenue Authority Act amidst objections from lawyers and strong resistance from the opposition Barbados Labour Party. Sinckler said it was time to put a stop to those evading their responsibility of paying taxes. Sinckler dismissed suggestions from lawyers that changes were unconstitutional.
The truth is, it does not abridge any constitutional rights. And it does not prevent the disposal of the land, because in the normal course of transacting business, the banks have worked on numerous occasions with the tax authorities to ensure that these matters are dealt with and resolved. And one has to have some type of faith in the system, that the system will work and work accordingly. Because if you're going to write legislation right down to the very instance, somebody will come up someday and say, oh, but you forgot this particular instance. So you come back and write that into the legislation too. And then when somebody else comes up 2 years after and say, oh, but you know something, we now discovered something, you got to put that in the legislation too. So you will be coming back every week or every 2 weeks to write in some instance. And I can't believe that legislation is designed and has been designed to work in that particular way.
Applications for dog licenses in Barbados have quadrupled since a pack of dogs, including a pit bull, attacked and killed an elderly woman in Haggett Hall, St. Michael, some 2 weeks ago. Acting Animal Control Officer Peter Belgrave told Barbados Today this afternoon that it is unfortunate it had to take a tragedy for large numbers of people to license their dogs. Belgrave also disclosed that the dogs which killed the woman were still at the Animal Control Center because there's no clear-cut policy to determine the fate of animals involved in such incidents.
Well, this is a matter which the Minister of Health, along with Cabinet, those are the ones which actually set the legislation, and therefore, as I'm sure has been mentioned already, they are looking at where amendments to the legislation would have to be strengthened. So therefore, as it's a policy matter, those persons within Cabinet, those are the persons that create policy, and me at my level, I just carry out the policy which is said.
In sports, experienced fast bowler Ravi Rampal believes knowledge of the conditions could give Trinidad and Tobago Red Force the edge over Jamaica Scorpions in their regional Super 50 semi-final tomorrow. Red Force topped the Group A, which was staged in Antigua, while Scorpions finished second in Group B, hosted in Barbados. And Rampal said this familiarity with the semi-final venue, which is Coolidge Cricket Ground, it would prove vital.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
It's the celebration of agriculture, 50 years and beyond. Come and experience this year's AgroFest exhibition at the historic Queen's Park on February 24th to 26th. Don't miss the African Heritage Month celebrations, the AgroFest Special Edition, an impressive display of leather products made from Barbados' black belly sheep, the best of crop over 2016, and much more. AgroFest 2017. Tickets available at all official box offices.
Get your paper. Only $2.25. $2.20. Who? For what? That's Bear Stare News. I don't read about that on Barbados Today since last night. That y'all only can't do. $2.20. Who?
The Barbados Today, news you can trust.
Welcome back with news from the region now. A young woman and her daughter living in fear of her jealous common-law husband in Guyana have been killed and set on fire. The assailant then hung himself and was also partly cremated in a house fire. Travis Chase reports.
The charred bodies of 26-year-old Latoya Telford, 34-year-old Leonard Pollard, and his 1-year-old daughter, Nicasia Pollard, were found here in the debris at sunrise Sunday morning. Fire crews rushed to the Betafawacting home after 4 a.m. Sunday. When they got there, the house had already been engulfed in flames. Police are now working on the theory of murder-suicide. Investigators believe that Pollard had lured Telford to the home, hacked her and his daughter to death before setting the house on fire. His brother, who spoke with Nightly News at the scene, said that the couple had separated over text messages the man had seen from another man in Latoya's phone.
They was together all the time. Up until recent, they started getting problem, and he kind of like find shit somebody else or come to me to reading text messages that she and some other guy meeting up and so on. I tried to tell him, let this girl go along her way.
Police now know that Telford and Pollard had separated since last November.
And finally, on the global front, the White House says President Donald Trump asked for Michael Flynn's resignation after he lost trust in his national security advisor for misleading Vice President Mike Pence over his calls with the Russian ambassador. Trump was also made aware of the Justice Department's concerns about Flynn's calls with the Russian ambassador, and that's according to the White House spokesman, Sean Spicer.
One day after the Trump administration offered conflicting stories about the fate of now former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, the White House tried to give one simple explanation. Flynn lost the trust of the president, and it was time to go.
The evolving and eroding level of trust as a result of this situation and a series of other questionable instances is what led the president to ask for General Flynn's resignation.
White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer says it was Flynn who sealed his own fate by misleading top administration officials, including the vice president, about his phone conversation about sanctions against Russia with the Russian ambassador during the transition. But Spicer declined to say whether Flynn had intentionally lied about the call.
I don't know that it was intentional. He may have just forgotten. But I think at some point, trust isn't just a trust.
Forget the conversation.
But that's the point, Jim, is that at some point that trust eroded to a point where the president did not feel comfortable with him serving in that position and asked for and received his resignation.
In his resignation letter, Flynn would only say he inadvertently briefed the vice president-elect and others with incomplete information regarding my phone calls with the Russian ambassador.
And that's news and sports, but for the very latest, visit our website at www.barbadostoday.bb. Also subscribe to our e-paper email updates and like us on Facebook. We are also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, our screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you, as well as Channel 99 on Flow TV and Mix 96.9 FM. I'm Emmanuel Joseph. Have a fantastic evening and be someone's Valentine.